started. I didn't like the book at first because it was just too silly.
Yeah.
And then in the middle, where it starts to get serious, I liked it more. And I could appreciate the humor then because it wasn't just a string of Hallmark birthday cards anymore. But then
it was no longer boom, boom, boom. You felt like it was more cleverly placed.
Still very cinematic, like, and you get this a lot of times where they describe things by saying, "Have you ever seen a film where?" They want you to picture a film in your mind, and then when I got to the end, I really don't like it. I like it even worse than I did at first. So anyway,
but you like parts of it, so
parts of it are very well written. Even the end is exquisitely well written. The plotting is superb. The idea for the story is very, very clever. So, like, I can appreciate some of the artistry here.
Yeah.
I think the message is really,
yeah,
really awful. To tell you the truth.
So is that what it was when you got to the end? That completely
it's not just the message, but yeah, it's kind of complicated. So sure, part of it's the message, but so they're choosing to ridicule some things that it doesn't seem to me they really understand. So, like, I can read in Nietzsche, Bertrand Russell, even Christopher Hitchens, when they take their shots at Christianity, in a weird way, I kind of enjoy it. Mark Twain, some of his more, let's say, skeptical literature and stuff that he's writing, really in a critique of Christianity, is kind of a let's say guilty pleasure of mine. His Letters from the Earth is really, really funny and really, really blasphemous. And but he knows the Bible. The reason I love Letters from the Earth so much is because Mark Twain knows the Bible backwards and forwards. And so he can rate, like, yeah, he's messing with it in a way that he's kind of earned the right to. I don't feel like it. Yeah.
If you're gonna make fun of something, know what you're making fun of. Is that
it feels to me like this is, written because it's kind of fashionable in the 80s to make fun of evangelical Christianity. I did find the little bit where Azrael possesses accidentally the TV evangelist.
Oh, yeah.
That was amusing. That didn't bother me so much. I mean, some of those guys need to be killed.
Yeah.
but still, like, he doesn't really know. I mean, they don't have any sympathy for what they're that's the part. If that makes sense?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It just got a little wearisome after a while. I'll tell you what the giveaway was. Okay.
Good.
They don't know what the name of the Apocalypse of John is. Sometimes they call it Revelation, which is its proper name. Sometimes they call it Revelations. And at first I thought, well, maybe this is just like the character here isn't. But when you have is it Death, who tells them to look at Revelations, chapter 6, and gives the verse, I'm like, whoever wrote that bit doesn't know the title of the book of Revelation. So you have a book that is kind of making fun of the book of Revelation, and they haven't really read it, I don't think. They've heard some things. It's kind of like the Coen brothers making a movie about the Odyssey without ever having read the Odyssey.
I don't remember.
It's still an amazing movie. I love Brother Brown.
After he said that, did he give the verse or did he just say to look at it?
look at it.
Uh,
Yeah, he gives the 4 or 5 verses that mention 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
mm,
So, and there's a couple times where they say that the Antichrist appears in the book of Revelation. We talked about that.
yeah, you.
Not on film, but yeah, the Antichrist is actually never mentioned, at least explicitly, in the book of Revelation.
Mhm.
It comes from other parts of the New Testament. So there's some stuff like that.
Yeah, well, you surprised me because that's something I didn't know either. Is that the only time the term Antichrist appears isn't even referring to who we refer to as the Antichrist.
Right, that's true. Yeah, so in the book of First John, um, it could be. Let me see if I can find that really quick, Austin. You may have to edit this out. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see how long it takes you. Everyone start the clock, right?
So it's in First John. Here it is, chapter 2. How long did it take me? 20
about
seconds.
less than, I think about 13 seconds. You're pretty fast.
All right. Children, it is the last hour. So this is First John chapter 2, verse 18. Children, it is the last hour, and as you have heard that Antichrist is coming, so now many Antichrists have come. Therefore we know that it is the last hour. They, notice it's in the plural, they went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would have continued with us. But they went out, that it might be plain that they all are not of us. But you have been anointed by the Holy One, and you all know. I write to you not because you do not know the truth, but because you know it, and know that no lie is of the truth. Who is the liar but he who denies that Jesus is the Christ? This is the Antichrist, he who denies the Father and the Son. Anyone who denies the Son does not have the Father. He who confesses the Son has the Father also. Let what you heard from the beginning abide in you. If what you heard from the beginning abides in you, then you will abide in the Son and in the Father. And this is what he has promised us, eternal life. So there's a lot of scholarly debate about what all that means. It's obviously talking about some form of first century heresy. They've come out of the church and they're denying in some way the Son, which, yeah.
This is referring to people who are against Jesus.
Right.
And not referring to the beast that will come.
Oh yeah. Okay, so that's very clear. Like all Christian eschatology. So he says, like, you've heard the Antichrist is coming. And they said, but there are already Antichrists here. So I think even they're saying there's like the big A Antichrist coming here, a little Antichrist. They're already like kind of prefiguring him. Where you get big A Antichrist vibes in 2 Thessalonians, I think it's chapter 2, where it talks about the man of sin. It doesn't call him the Antichrist. But
so I was surprised when I learned that you never actually get the big A Antichrist referred to as the big A Antichrist.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. And he's not, okay, so in Revelation, there is this beast that comes up from the sea and probably is, I would say, a Antichrist figure. That's actually talking about the Roman emperor. And then so Revelation, surprisingly for people like this, I'm thinking, is actually not really written about the future. It's written to describe what people going through persecution in the first century. It's written for them to encourage them. And we kind of eavesdrop on it, and it still has something to say for us today because things don't change that much. But yeah, this idea that the Antichrist is like some spawn of Satan or something like that, that's not in any of the, let's say, respectable Christian literature. Okay, like this isn't a part of the tradition.
Yeah.
He's always a human being who has given himself over to satanic powers. It's more of a cooperation, but not. He's not like inherently evil or something.
So it's not like what we have here where Satan said, "Take my baby up there and put it in the household."
Yeah,
It's it'll be somebody who's like, "I'm gonna make a deal with the devil."
yeah, that's exactly.
But beyond that, because we have people that do that, but like fully like commit to.
Well, and have there's a political aspect to it. There's a religious aspect to it. Somebody who somehow is going to have power and influence, and so Satan can give you those things. So yeah, like kind of a sell your soul to the devil type of scenario is probably more likely. But yeah, okay. So what do you think of this, Austin? We got this. So Adam, the answer for Adam Young, is he human at all?
And that's interesting because like I said in this book, it literally is these demons show up with a baby and they're like, go take this over there and pull a switcheroo, like we're gonna plant this into a house.
And this unsuspecting couple, they're gonna
and I mean that would mean that Adam Young is completely Satan's spawn. Like it's
it doesn't have like a biological mother that we hear of.
Yeah,
right.
So on that technicality, he wouldn't be human at all. But then I think part of what their idea is you don't have to be human to be human.
Well, that's what they say at the end.
Yeah, because the whole time we're seeing that
now I'm thinking of
our two main characters are supposed to be an angel and a demon, and then they've been here so much they start to act more like humans would,
and they see things from a human perspective rather than the old angel.
Yeah, and I think it's we get the same thing with Adam is they pulled a switcheroo and then the baby got put in the different house than they thought, so he has no outside influence. He's being raised by normal people like any normal child.
He's supposed to have been raised by Satan's.
Right, and then they misplaced him and he was not. So then he was raised like any other kid, and for the first part where we meet him, he's like any other kid. And so I think in that sense that the two of them did want us to feel like he is human, but on a technical term, like we said, he's not. Like, however that works, if you are Satan's spawn genetically, he's not human.
But they say, there's the big reveal at the end, because he hasn't been raised by Satanists, then he's so one of them is Azrael or Crowley, they say. So he's neither like evil incarnate nor good incarnate, he's just human incarnate, they say. So but he can still do things with his mind. And I don't know. And he's got he has paranormal potential if he chooses to.
And that's very mature for a kid that age to say, I know my potential and I won't use it because it's wrong.
Yeah.
That seems like, we get glimpses that he does a little bit because he goes back to his bookstore and it's all back together.
Sure. And
it has weird books because a kid doesn't know exactly what to.
Well, he puts in the kinds of books he likes.
Yeah.
They think it's kind of a joke. Even. Like it might not be that he doesn't know what was in there, but they he puts in oh, you got all this old dusty stuff. Let's get rid of it, I think. But yeah,
Yeah. So we see he claims he won't do it, and then we see him do it a little bit, and
it does
it's
do it a
in,
little bit.
but
Yeah.
and the ways he does it, it's nothing that's going to be a major impact. That it's things that'll go unseen.
Beneficent.
Yeah. And it's for really these guys. And
What happens at the end with Satan? That was a little. I read it at a pretty quick clip. So you have Satan coming up,
he comes up,
and then what happens? Everything's like okay then.
it seems like that part got sped through to me. I know you had to speed through it yourself, but to me, it seemed, A gets his flaming sword back.
Yeah.
Crowley, I don't remember if he even picks up anything, but then the two of
Has a
them.
tire iron.
Oh yeah, he grabs his tire iron off his car, and he's like, the two of them decide, you know what, we gotta take this guy down and protect everyone else here,
Right.
and then Admiral so and so that
Dude, Shadwell.
he's
Sergeant Shadwell.
he grabs up his gun and it's like, I'm gonna face him with you.
Yeah, it's his blunderbuss. And is Shadwell, is his name supposed to sound like Shadwell? Or is it just like
That could be a coincidence, but I
don't
wouldn't
know.
be surprised if it's supposed
it
to
was
sound
like
like
almost like that? Yeah, I don't know.
that small humor of ah ha ha Shadwell.
Yeah.
So it could be intentional, but who's to say?
Okay.
But so the three of them, go up there to go fight him. Here's where the one point where things seemed off to me is they described that their clothes and them were burned because they got from getting close to Satan because he's so hot. And to me, that was my immediate thought was, why is Shadwell okay? That means he should be dead, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And then later he's fine. And then my other thing is all of that happened, and then I'm pretty sure it's just Adam, just Satan's gone.
Yeah. Did he kill Satan or did he?
I'm thinking he just sent him back down to hell.
It talks about him like running or something.
Yeah, because to me that for having that big.
Oh, I think I just figured something out.
Okay.
He doesn't obey his parents, so he's not going to obey his human parents. But here comes his real father, and so it's like it's the ultimate act of defiance. He's like,
I'm not going to obey you either.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think it's that part was confusing to me.
Mm-hmm. It felt.
Have you seen the whole series?
Yeah, I've seen the whole series.
So it's similar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless I could be remembering wrong. It was 4 years ago when I watched it. I do want to watch it again. I saw they're coming out with a season 2, and the whole first season is this whole book, and they didn't write. There's no follow-up story that either of them wrote, so I have no idea what season 2. I don't even know what they could tell with season 2, but
okay,
I'm gonna watch it.
They almost set it up for a sequel at the end because there's this other other book,
and I'm guessing
Nice and Accurate Prophecies, but then they burn it. It sounds like Newt and Anathema burn it.
And honestly, that bothered me. That they burned it.
Yeah, okay, it does bother me too. Okay, and why did it bother you?
Okay, well, this whole time, they're relying on the Nice and Accurate Prophecies of Mrs. Mayer, and then well, honestly, they probably never even finished out the first ones. Because even all the way up to the end, they were still just grabbing random note cards and figuring out. But so there's probably some they still didn't even finish. But so then when the delivery man comes up, I'm thinking oh, and I'm realizing what this is gonna be. I'm like, oh, that's actually really cool. I think that's kind of fun. The idea that she could see the future. So she was writing down these prophecies. Equally in seeing the future, she said, "Oh, well, I could make sure they get even more prophecies." And I thought that was kind of fun for those characters, for like who they were and what they're supposed to be. And then, like for Newt, I get the motivation of it more. But for Erasma or Anathema, for Anathema, I was like, well, that changed. It felt like it was out of nowhere. Like the whole time we had her reliant on these and like devoted to it, and then she was just like, nah.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a little bit abrupt.
Yeah, well, especially for the build up where it talked about how a few people had opened the box at times, and inside the box was a note saying, and they panicked and closed the box, and they were like, "No one ever opens the box," and she still knew that someone else would, and she left a note for them too. And then,
yeah. So then, no, and then also we know that the prophecy is not like they're really perspicuous. They're very difficult to. So even if they read them, it doesn't mean that they know what it all means. So I don't know.
Yeah, each of the prophecies are very vague. You know, it's not like they have the cheat sheet to go and gamble and win big money or anything like that. Like,
it says a few people have profited from them, but not in a really serious way.
In an indirect way.
Yeah. For me, okay. I think that they're saying something about books of prophecy, including the Book of Revelation. That's why it bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
So even though, I mean, this is written by a witch, so it wouldn't be like, but still, the idea is we're better off without prophecies.
Yeah,
is what I was getting.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's definitely the message that they were.
Yeah. So that also. Now, there's a sense in which, like, the way so many people read the Book of Revelation, they would probably be better off without. Like, but again, it's almost like they see Revelation the same way, like late night TV evangelist nut jobs do, and they've rejected it, whereas the TV evangelist nut job doesn't. And I'm like, there's a little more nuanced way to receive the Book of Revelation that they're kind of ignoring here. But
we'll let me play devil's advocate and make an argument for them that they probably didn't intend at all. And that's when we studied Bede, the big thing was
that's true.
Don't be a prepper. Don't anticipate this. Don't plan your whole life around it.
That's true.
Know that it'll eventually happen, and then do what you do. Like don't. So then equally in burning that book, it's saying maybe we should stop living our life around this and obsessing about it, and just do it.
I think that's a more charitable take, and I think it's legitimate. It just does, because we're told that her prophecies, in contrast to St. John, who was evidently addicted to psychoactive mushrooms, that hers was like really accurate and nice. I don't know. So yeah, I do get it. That I can, if that's that, I think I could go down with. But it's still, they're burning the book. But yeah,
they are burning the book.
But yeah, that, and I think that is true. Like trying to decode these prophecies, and again, this is why I'm like they were never meant to be read that way. But when you live your life right now in a pop Catholic culture, there's a lot of various visionaries through the centuries have gotten messages about what's going to go down at the end of time with very precise instructions about things like having blessed candles in your house and you know how much holy water and yeah, and with such a precision that would have made like the prophet Ezekiel, you know, envious, right? Like and so some of these visionaries are saints, and it's not that, but it's still. I have to wonder if that was ever, well, I don't wonder. I'm sure that that was never God's intent to so I mean, really, a lot of it becomes paranoia, and Jesus tells us not to worry, and these things actually contribute to worry and anxiety sometimes. So, yeah, I get that, and I can say amen to that. I have a bigger problem with the book. Okay, I think we got. Let's go ahead and move on to this because I want to make sure that we talk about this because I think. And as I was reading the book, it became more clear to me, like, why is it what's bothering me? And I think I can articulate it this way.
You came to the realization that you're a hater.
I'm a hater.
No, I coincidentally, the two books that we've gone back to back so far,
I've hated.
You've hated, and I made the observation that I tend to have the more charitable or optimistic perspective.
You're a lover, not a fighter.
Yeah,
I like this one better than Watchmen. I can't say that.
Okay.
But yeah, I think all in all, I like it better. But still, okay. So it has a sort of what it all boils down to is their worldview is decidedly non-dualistic. I think we talked a little bit about this last time, but it's especially strong at the end. So for them, both evil and good are bad options. And the ideal thing is to be like Adam, to be this kind of, human incarnate, meaning neutral. And it's a messed up understanding of good. Good is somehow not natural. Okay, that's the thing is they're saying the best option would be to be natural, and I think that's goodness.
Yeah. Well, because we broke it down where we said their perspective is that good, boring, because good things mean that you can't have fun based off of. And then bad
is also boring.
Well, it's the absence of good, but then you don't have anything else, so it's still boring.
And so, like, their whole thing, okay, at the very end, this is right at the very end, the last page. So I think we're supposed to see things from, so ironically, the Antichrist, the spawn of Satan, is the one who has the proper perspective of everything. So think about that a little bit. And the last thing that we see from his perspective is this. He steals this apple and the person's chasing him. It's an obvious sort of, we begin in the Garden of Eden, and here we end in another Garden of Eden type of thing. He couldn't see, he being Adam, couldn't see why people made such a fuss about people eating their silly old fruit anyway. But life would be a lot less fun if they didn't. And there never was an apple, in Adam's opinion, that wasn't worth the trouble you got into for eating it. So there's my big problem with this. Is it saying that actually, if we had not rebelled against God, life would be a lot shittier, right? And
It'd be a lot more boring.
it'd be boring. Yeah, it wouldn't be fun. And so that um, the rebellion against God, even though it brings dreadful consequences, is worth it. And I think that's just downright diabolical. Now,
it is pretty tiny.
you think, I mean, that's what the serpent says, right?
So, what do you think about them intentionally? And back at the beginning when we're naming the child, and then when you've just first learned, they were like, "Let's go with naming the Antichrist Adam."
Right. I didn't know what I thought. That's interesting. That's weird.
And then that's the other one that was presumed the Antichrist is named Warlock.
Right. Right. Yeah. I did like at the end where they bring Warlock to Armageddon, to Megiddo. They did know that Armageddon isn't actually a place. That in Megiddo they found out there's an archaeological site. It made me chuckle when you have people in turbans with bad teeth, I think they said. So they don't know like what sort of tour guides you actually get when you visit Megiddo. They're picturing like the very stereotypical, I would say, like, I mean, it's kind of racist, to be honest.
Yeah.
What sort of people you're going to meet when you go to Megiddo.
The one thing you get in the TV adaptation when it shows that scene that you don't get here is two of the demons are standing there watching, and they're starting to like, just, and then one of them's finally like, but why isn't he doing anything?
Yeah. So I mean, I did kind of like that part where he's like, okay, what? And there's like, what would you like to do now? Go home, I guess. Yeah, but I thought that was kind of amusing. So again, the whole deal with Armageddon, though, in the Book of Revelation, is that valley is the battlefield of the Bible. It's where, well, the first battle in historical records took place there between Egypt and Assyria. It's where Josiah was killed in battle by the Egyptians. It's like, it's a really, I mean, so John's not saying this is where it's all going to go down. He's just saying that he's talking about war, and that's like the prototypical battlefield in the Bible. Anyway, what was I talking about? So, okay, yeah, the Antichrist and his name. At the end, I see what they're doing. At the beginning, I was like, I don't know why they named him Adam.
Yeah.
Adam Young. Like, that's also interesting. The last name. But he's definitely another, like he's in the same sort of situation now of having to make it's interesting, Austin, because we say that Jesus is the second Adam. So in this sense, he really is truly the Antichrist. Because here he's a third Adam, who's kind of like, so Jesus, the reason we say Jesus is the second Adam, this goes back to St. Paul in Romans chapter 5, chapter 6. His whole thing is that Adam and Jesus are in the same kind of position for salvation history. So everything's coming down to what Adam is going to decide. He represents all of humanity. So when he faces temptation, when he decides to eat the fruit, it affects all of us as a consequence. Jesus comes and reverses that by putting himself in the same situation. He endures temptation, and instead of rebelling, this is key. He obeys the Father, accepting his will in the garden. He's in the Garden of Gethsemane. So if it's your will that let this chalice pass from me, but not my will, your will be done. And by doing that, he is able to take us out from under the curse that Adam put us under. So here you have this other Adam And he's in a similar situation. And he's given, like, he's basically facing the temptation of whether or not it's similar to the temptations Christ endured in the wilderness, to be the ruler of all the earth. All the kingdoms of the earth will be yours. All you have to do is bow down to me. And he rejects that as well. And yet at the end, it's not like he's exactly obeying either.
Yeah. Well, it's like he hit the reset button.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like, it seems like that's what they're doing a little bit in a sense, is like, oh, well, I'm not obeying, and then they do, the whole thing where he takes the apple and he takes a bite out of it, clearly alluding to the very beginning.
So it's like starting everything over again.
It's like they're saying, like, eventually we're gonna get to it, but right now we're just gonna
We get to
start
enjoy
over
this
again. We're
a
gonna
little bit
enjoy this a
longer.
little longer.
Yeah. I thought some of the things in there are quite profound. The whole bit about the whales, like, if you start, punishing people when they kill whales, where does it end? Like, there's, the best you can do is tell people if you kill a whale, you got a dead whale. Like, I think that's pretty profound. But it's still this idea that somehow God does not want the best for us. That somehow His will is outside of our good, and that's running all through this book. And the way I think it is most manifest is in this war between the angels and the demons. So the whole purpose, like, what's the purpose of the war?
It comes off as the purpose of the war is just because they're supposed to have a war.
Right. They're supposed to have a war. It's ineffable.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just, well, we got to go fight. We're supposed to go fight.
Yeah.
And then, and occasionally we get them going, why?
Yeah.
It's in it.
That's right. So you have this kind of standpoint that it's almost like God has all of these things. So you have two versions of God's will. So you have the ineffable will of God, and it has nothing to do with God's care and concern for humanity. Because in Revelation, the war between good and evil is not just to see which side's going to win. Okay, it's not like they turn this into like West Side Story or something, Sharks and the Jets, right? It's not like that. In the Book of Revelation, it's all about us. It's not. The angels have already fought their war in heaven. They don't need to do it anymore. The reason that there's any more warfare is because of us. And God is trying to, he's defeating the works of Satan so that we can enjoy fellowship with him. And you don't get that. Like, God isn't really interested in having fellowship with humanity in this. And then so the other option for God's will, besides ineffability, is that I think God shows up once in the duck pond. Okay, I take that to be God, because they're musing over, like, why does this all happen? And then there's this figure, he's throwing bread to the ducks, and one of them, I can't remember if it's Crowley or Azurflow, they're like, well, maybe this is just, God just, this amuses him somehow. Like, he winds us all up, and we'll see what happens with it. And then he like turns around and looks at him and like, yeah, that's it, So
yeah. Well, and then doesn't one of them say, what if this was his plan?
Right.
And we didn't know the rest of the plan.
We just didn't know the rest of the plan. And the plan being just to wind it up and see what happens with it. So in this one, it's because this version of God's will is that we're an experiment, an amusing experiment for God. And that's not much better, because the real reason God created, according to Catholic theology, The whole purpose of existence, of material existence at least, is so that we can have fellowship with God. God created us not because he wants to prove something or gain glory for himself or like just we're not an ant farm. They do interesting things. It's because God created us because he wanted someone to love.
Yeah.
God is love. You never hear God is loving.
Who's he got to prove anything to?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So there's that's my biggest problem with the book. Is the relationship between humanity and God is all off whack in here. And this is one of the reasons I think Jesus never shows up in the book. If for a book about the Antichrist, it's the Christ is conspicuously absent. So the only time he's mentioned is in that little scene with the TV evangelist, and that's kind of amusing when he's turned Jesus into something trite. And yeah, I'm okay with making fun of that. But
yeah, but no, that's I think all of these are probably factors as to why. You said too that sometimes when you throw Jesus into a story, it browse a lot of feathers. And then
because some people, because you can only do two things with Jesus if you put him in a story. You can either preach him or make fun of him. You're going to offend somebody.
Either way, you're making people mad.
Sure. Yeah, that's right.
And then the third, I don't think was even intentional. I think a coincidence is that, we talked about that before Jesus comes back, the Antichrist comes into power.
It's true.
And we never got that. So Jesus never came back. And I don't think that was even what they were intentionally doing with it. Because it's a very interesting point. I think they're right that they never even mentioned Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting. So, according to the Bible, the man of sin, the Antichrist, will be slain by the breath of Jesus' mouth, whatever that means. But here, they're taking Shadwell to kill him with a blunderbuss, right?
Which I was presuming if they actually
an angel should know better.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, it's not going to work, and yeah, an angel should know better.
But anyway, we have that.
An angel should know better to begin with to think that Shadwell could harm anything, any type of entity at all.
That's true. Of course, they're trying to put off the responsibility of having to kill an 11-year-old kid.
Yeah,
which raises another question. Why in all of these things is the Antichrist a freaking child?
We talked about this a little the other day, because I mentioned to you, I've never witnessed an interpretation where he's not a child.
That's weird.
And this story,
isn't that weird?
I never thought about it because I was so used to it. But in this he is, and any of those comedy sitcoms like Family Guy, American Dad, all those random.
Does Antichrist show up in those?
Yeah, as a kid.
As a kid?
As a kid, he's a kid.
Okay, that's weird. Okay, so this is not a part of the Catholic or like Christian tradition at all. This is not in the New Testament. They're not interested at all in the juvenile stage of the man of sin. He's the man of sin. He's not the teenager of sin.
And Netflix, I told you I watched that movie called Eli, where you didn't know the whole entire time, but at the end you learned that this kid is the Antichrist. But
interesting.
Yeah, it's every interpretation I've ever witnessed. The Antichrist is a kid.
So one of the half dozen or dozen references to film is to the Omen here. There's the one that I've never seen the entire film of the Omen, but I just have happened to see the bit with the plate glass that slides off the lorry, the truck,
Mm.
and decapitates this guy. So they mentioned this. So they've
Mhm.
obviously seen the
The
Omen,
Omen.
and the Omen is about a kid, Antichrist, and Damien. I think it's got Gregory Peck in it, and I think they adopt him. I can't remember.
So, do you think it is that in our modern society, people are wanting to humanize the figure, or do you think? Well, it could just be people are having a misconception, but
But it has to come from somewhere.
yeah, but so also is it just there is nothing that actually talks about the Antichrist as a juvenile and as a child and what he's like as a kid. And so that fascinates people to want to explore that.
I don't know. I think part of it is, I mean, it's kind of creepy. So there's a sort of fascination with creepy kids. We've
Yeah.
all seen creepy children. I don't. You've encountered creepy children, haven't you?
Yeah, of course.
So children are supposed to be sweet and innocent, and so when you meet a child who's not, creeps you out. And so there's this kind of trope. It's also like dealing. I mean, I guess it's trying to be interesting in that perspective.
Have you seen the Harry Potter film?
I'm not seeing Harry Potter.
Okay.
I'm basically like a pop culture illiterate. That's what
Mhm.
we're
Okay. Well, there's towards I think it's in the sixth movie, we get a glimpse back into Voldemort's juvenile days. And Dumbledore goes to visit him because he's gonna bring him to Hogwarts. He says he's gonna help him, and then I get a sense of like we're looking at the Antichrist from the juvenile perspective in that
Using-
moment because we're seeing he's the ultimate evil, and that same song and dance through Star Wars, Harry Potter, like all of those. It's good versus evil, right? But Dumbledore goes in there and he's being the creepy kid, and he's sitting on his bed like this, and he's like, I do bad things when I don't want to. I talk to snakes and they talk back to me. Sometimes I just start a fire. And then he looks at his cabinet and just catches on fire. And Dumbledore's like, ooh. He's like, oh, let me take you to the school.
Creepy. Yeah. I mean, well, the last Stranger Things, last season of Stranger Things, it has a sort of, it does plays on this trope too, with Vecna as like little kid Vecna, and like hints that like 11 could be too. So
Yeah.
there's that sort of, yeah. It plays well on television.
So it works for story structure.
Yeah, it's weird that because you could do that all sorts of ways without having to go Antichrist. So that's the thing that's interesting is that making this like demonically possessed kid the Antichrist. That's an interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know what's.
How are we on time? Because we have not got to talk about the Four Horsemen, which I know you looked forward
Oh.
to.
Yeah, we need to wrap it up, like maybe 3 minutes.
Okay. Then I'll just say that one of my favorite parts was that biker gang. And one of them.
Is this the laugh out loud part you were talking
Yeah.
about? Okay.
One of them was like, hey, like we need to go and like, find a church. We need to confess. We need to, and then the other one's like, oh, I know what we gotta do. And then they're like, we're 8 horsemen of the apocalypse now because this biker gang's following them. And then they're sitting there and they're like, what do you want to be? And he's like, I want to be for telemarketers. I hate getting those phone calls. And the other ones, like, I want to be the horseman of the cool guys.
Right.
And they're like, huh? And he's like, those guys that just think they're cool and they wear sunglasses when they don't need to wear sunglasses. I hate those guys.
Crowley.
Yeah, I thought of Crowley when he described that, but that whole thing tickled me. I thought that was funny.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
these guys were like, yeah, we're going out with style. We're one of them, and then they're talking about the stupid petty things that make them mad. It's like,
It was interesting. They play with the four horsemen in a couple ways because you have the bikers who are imitating them. What I thought was funny about the bikers is how much how good they were all at trivia.
yeah. And it kept switching to Bible trivia question, and to get more specific about that.
And they knew that stuff really well. That was kind of clever. But but then you also like Adam and the them are also sort of four horsemen. They're riding on bicycles, not
I saw that it was being paralleled because there's exactly four of them, like Adam with his gang.
And then they take out the four horsemen with their own little, like he has them make little makeshift swords and scales and a crown and the whole bit about the pale horseman being pestilence or then pollution. That's interesting. I've never and I think that's one reading. You know, a lot of people think that that is actually the Antichrist, and some people think it's Christ. It never really said he comes conquering with a sword. Doesn't so the other three, it's really clear who they are. But the white horseman, the first horseman, is we're never really in the Book of Revelation doesn't tell us who he is.
Well, they made a joke out of it, but they said there's who was pestilence, but then they came out with penicillin, and right. So now he's pollution.
Right.
But I think they did that to be funny, but I think they were intentionally doing that because definitely in our day and age, there's greater concern that pollution and harm to the environment is going to cause more damage and harm to us than.
I was surprised that so this was written in '86 or something. I'm surprised that they knew so much about global warming because I don't remember hearing anything about that until like the end of the '90s. Really.
But they made reference and talk of global warming a few times.
So this is the white horse, okay, and then we need to wrap it up. Now I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seven seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures say, as with a voice of thunder, "Come!" And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. It doesn't say who he is. This says, the people who put the notes in this Bible say, the four horsemen of the apocalypse appears, the first four seals are open, symbolizing conquest, war, famine, and then pestilence is death, actually, here. That's what I was confused by. I was like, where's the white horse? And then they had the pale horse, who's also death, the black horse, violent. So there were, they're kind of like messing with it. Yeah. Again, I'm not sure they actually did it.
But their take was interesting. It's just the way they depicted, like how famine was.
Yeah, I really
living
kind of appreciated that.
That was really nice touch. Actually,
very clever. Yeah, I like that.
But
all right,
so we'll wrap it up. My wrap-up question then is: would you recommend this to anyone?
I don't think so. On a very limited basis. I'm not gonna have my kids read it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I probably wouldn't like. I mean, there would be certain people I probably would say you shouldn't read this. Most people I wouldn't be too. I mean, thinking about people in my friend circle or whatever, I wouldn't be too worried about it, like destroying their faith or something.
Yeah.
Or, it's just, I don't think it's really worth it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I appreciate the humor.
I give it 2 mediocre sideways thumbs.
I will say, go watch the show. That's what I'll say. I'll tell all of you go watch the show because as someone who watched the show then read the book, it's the exact same. So you might as well just watch the show.
I would recommend reading the Book of Revelation.
But don't take everything for exact.
No, don't read.
There's not going to be a monster crawling out of the water.
There won't.
That's not what that means.
No.
It's metaphor.
It is. All right.
Well, that's this time.
Thank you, Austin.
Thank you. With the
We're
World
doing
Needs.
War of the Worlds, right?
Mhm.
Is that right?
Oh, that is next. War of the
Yeah.
Worlds.
The War of the Worlds needs a little pause.
So, world needs a little War of the Worlds talk.
How you been?
Yeah?
Yeah,
A little
so-
spin better?